Travis Wingoodsall. I was born and raised in the covenant of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and yet, despite having over 8.7K videos exclusively talking about my religion on YouTube for the past years, Mormons assume and accuse me of betraying the church and therefore them in order to justify committing religious hate crimes and attacks against me, to abuse me, to even just put a simple thumbs down as a troll, all because they have claimed that I am the other, that I have betrayed them to justify their hating me. And they'll even say that I hate them so that they can justify hating me. And they'll say that I can leave the church, but I will never leave the church alone, when it's they who are not leaving me alone. Beam and moat. For people who claim to be religious with Scripture, they don't tend to follow it, and thus the false accusations. Nevertheless, origins of religion are essential for any religious person to continue to be in a religion. Being a religious person is an investment in life. You can't just belong as some kind of a country club or an Amazon membership, or say, well, you shop at Walmart, you have a Walmart membership, I am an Amazon shopper. We're the one true store. It's about as absurd as it gets with religion. Except that Walmart and Amazon are not that old compared to religions. In the Scriptures, in searching for record of the fathers, there are only 4 from the Bible. The rest of the 72 are from Joseph Smith's editions for his religion. And it focuses on the need to keep an accurate record, history of not only family origins, but for religious origins, that you don't forget and create a new religion and then claim it's the origin, replacing the actual origin of your religion. The Book of Mormon emphasizes this, especially over and over and over and over and over and over, so that Mormons who join Joseph Smith's religion will understand this. Do not replace the origin religion. Okay, so today is the Jewish 9/11, 9th month, 11th day in the civil calendar. Just so that you know. Just so that you know. Last week, I think it was, I don't think it was earlier this week, whenever the German leader, whether he's a chancellor or president, whatever they call him, came to the White House, he presented Trump with, I think it was his grandfather's birth certificate, and that's been under controversy ever since Trump and MAGA have been pushing the birtherism of Obama from Kenya. The abuse to deny the origins of Obama. And so Trump, likewise, is not American. He is an immigrant family, and therefore has birthright citizenship because of his immigrant grandparents, if not parents. I think it's grandparent, but... And nonetheless, Trump is deporting everyone who is not of the British origin colonizer. Because that's what it seems to be. Nobody else seems to be allowed. Everybody must go. Make America Great Britain again. And so this is similar to Hitler, who was trying to create a white master race of Germans, when he himself was a reject of the white master race. Not only did he not have blonde hair and blue eyes, he wasn't tall enough. He was a little guy. And what the hell is with that mustache? Can't you grow a normal mustache? Nonetheless, this denialism of origin causes problems, especially when they take over leadership positions. And so, let's go back to the beginning and educate you on origins of religions. We begin with the creation of mankind as far back as archaeological evidence has found. Over 300,000 years ago, has my paternal line and maternal line, I believe, I keep mixing them up. It's a 50-50 thing. One of them is 300,000 years ago, the other is 200,000 years ago. But they're from the same origin, they just migrated up at different times, about 100,000 years apart from each other. Which means they came from a different origin source that we haven't found yet. And, well, anyway. But they both came from the same location that all of mankind has come from, in Southeast See, we were doing so good yesterday, so good, and then back again today on Thursday. Both come from Southeast Asia, where all mankind originates from. We just haven't found the original Adam and Eve, as there are DNA scholars who claim that there are 7 daughters of Eve for haplogroups. That's just because Southeast Africa, that's where we all originate from. The people from Europe came from Southeast Africa. That's why we can breed with them. It's not the missing links. Neanderthals were not others, or they like to call them Neanderthals. I don't care. The original language was picture language, had ideographic meaning behind it. You had to visualize the meaning. Anyway, and so they migrated up into the Nile River, and that's where the first kingdom of Egypt on earth began. And the first kingdom of Egypt was by a man named Osiris, according to the records. Egyptologists will try to claim that it's Narmer, or the Scorpion King, or wrong, because they're denying it's either the Palermo or the Dendera stone that has pre-Narmer pharaohs ruling Egypt in cartouches. And I don't understand why they reject that, other than they don't understand the dating. It's similar to the Bible, similar to the Assyrian document, Gilgamesh, where the dates of a pharaoh or king are just so long beyond what we would consider normal. And so instead of saying we don't know, but here's the king's list, they just ignore it and hope it goes away. Unbelievable. And so yes, the first one that we have a record of is Osiris, the first pharaoh, first king of Egypt. And so yeah, the stories from the most complete original documents, oldest documents, are from the pyramid text, talking about Osiris and the first instances that all Egyptians utilize. Because their whole culture, government, religion, traditions, all come from that first story of the assassination of the Osiris by Set, his brother, and then the coming of Osiris's son Horus to restore the throne. And so everything in the culture of Egypt was based upon that origin. And so mankind continued to migrate out of Egypt and spread throughout all the world. This is where even the Mayans and Toltecs came from. Building the pyramids that they built came from the knowledge of their fathers all the way back to Egypt. China, likewise, comes from Egypt. Their language is a variation, an alteration, a reformation of Egyptian. It is reformed Egyptian. Mormons. Chinese is reformed Egyptian. The most obvious one is their symbol of the sun, which is a square with a little in the middle of it. For Egyptians, circle in the middle of it. Same. It's because China came from Egypt. The DNA also confirms this. And so yes, the American Indians have Chinese DNA in them. They came from Egypt. What was Lehi again? Egyptian. How did Joseph know? Modern DNA scholarship was trying to prove the Book of Mormon wrong by using Jewish Orthodox. Wrong. Wrong DNA. Wrong DNA. Pre-Babylonian captivity Jewish Egyptians. Dumbasses. Anyway, If you've not been following me, there's too much to explain. And so, as Osiris is his name, he's also known as Amun. And so when he died, he becomes Father Amun. His son Horus becomes Son Amun. And so the pharaohs, especially of the 18th dynasty, which is the start of the Jews, the birth of the Jews, of David Moses III, transliterated into English from Paleo-Hebrew from Egyptian, so that you would understand what I'm talking about. It's the Thal Mose. If I were to more closely use the learning of the Greeks, learning of the Greeks in the language of the Egyptians from the Rosetta Stone, you might not understand what I'm talking about then. And so David Moses III of the 18th dynasty, David Moseses, with Yah Moses, just flip it around, Moses Yah, and hey, the book of Moses Yah in the Book of Mormon. Mosiah, Mosiah, Moses, Mosiah. There's a reason why they named it that way. The first pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, chasing out the Hyksos back into Canaan area. And in 1450 BCE, the Hittites had been occupying and encroaching into Egyptian land from northern Canaan, from Turkey down into northern Canaan. And so David Moses III sent his armies up and met them in the Valley of Armageddon. Again, I'm using English of the Paleo-Hebrew of the Egyptian, so you will understand what I'm saying. And in the midst of the battle, Pharaoh David Moses III goes on vacation. And he goes to the mountaintop to put his foot on the mountaintop of a hamlet called Salem by the people who were living there for at least pre-1500 BCE. They've been there for a while. A little tribal group. And there he went on vacation. Left the military to continue the war, and eventually they would push back the Hittites back to their land and retake the land of Egypt, as the soldiers would pillage the army of the Hittites for their reward. After this experience of the king of Egypt visiting the little hamlet called Salem, they would go on to build the temple of Salem, which you know as the Jerusalem temple, and build the palace. Every king of Salem is that title, regardless of the other name that they had. And so they were all Solomon, from Paleo-Hebrew. Solemn, Salem, peace, the land. And the N at the end is the suffix determinative for king, or kingdom for the land. The kingdom of Salem, the king of Salem, Solomon. I don't understand why nobody gets this. I guess it's because they didn't decipher Paleo-Hebrew. Nonetheless, you have kings of Salem over time giving tribute to Egypt, as now they have a massive temple, a palace for their kings. And they are Egyptian. It is the Egyptian religion of Amun. IMMANUEL. Transliterated, as we have English from Paleo-Hebrew and Isaiah. This is the Jewish God. And in 700, you have Assyria coming in and deporting the northern tribes at that time into Assyria, as Assyrians would deport Assyrians into the northern tribes to replace them, and they interbred with the poor who did not get deported to become Samaritans. And then 600 years BCE, Babylon emerged from the swamps of Iraq and rose up and conquered Assyria, and then sent their military out through the territory occupied by Assyria to let them know of the new management that's taken place, and then expanded to conquer Judah and place their king, the brother of Nebuchadnezzar, on the throne of Jerusalem, Zedekiah. And so now Jerusalem is required to give tribute to Babylon, no longer to Egypt. This is the first time that these people were conquered and have to give rental payments to new management. But Zedekiah was a naughty boy. And so 11 years later, 586 BCE, because that was 597 BCE when it happened. So if you're going to call the Book of Mormon literal history, it's 4 CE, 600 years later. Kind of important. You can't deny or replace history with falsehood with your newly created religion. See where we're going with this? And so Nebuchadnezzar came back and just destroyed Jerusalem because of his brother's disobedience. Temple, the palace, destroyed. And instead of deportation, kidnapping. Being taken into bondage to Marduk. Bind yourself to Marduk. And taken to of Babylon. Did not exist before Babylon. Babylon emerged and then created their capital, Did not exist before. Beirut, Lebanon is the Tower of Babel. And Abraham was Egyptian. I mean, come on, Mormons. Seriously? Facsimile number 1, Abraham in Egypt. God. You don't believe him, do you? You don't believe Joseph. You just create your own thing because dumbass scholars who don't know are trying to prove Christianity is true. And you believe them. And so you have to prove somehow the Book of Mormon is true of the falsehoods of Christianity scholars who's destroying history, destroying the record of the religions and of mankind. Nonetheless, we continue. And so the Persians then emerge, and so again, under new management. The Jews are freed from being bound to Marduk. And they no longer have to follow the Temple Covenant paths. No longer have to wear the garments of the Babylonians. We're getting to it. See, already you think I'm therefore a betrayer because I don't deny the truth of our religion. That's why I started with that. You're supposed to go, oh, okay, I guess he knows something about the subject matter. I don't, therefore I shouldn't judge him because I might be pulling a Beeman moat. I might be revealing something about me that I don't want revealed. They never learn. Never. And so Persia, with King Emperor Cyrus, gives out the decree that all the religions, it's not just the Jews, get to go back to their land. That's different than saying you're free, go build your temple again, and you get to own your own land. No, they still had to pay tribute to Persia. They were not free. It was just new management that chose not to hold them in bondage to Marduk and wear the underwear. Nonetheless, what is fascinating is that despite this, despite the Greeks and then the Romans, the Jews embraced Babylon's culture. They became assimilated into all things Babylonian, not Egyptian, of which their origins are. Very fascinating. Because the book of Daniel says, don't do it. Don't assimilate into Babylon. Stay Egyptian. I will not worship your Babylonian God. And yet, by altering the language, altering the holy days, having a different calendar, having the rituals of the Babylonians with the pure white master race of sheep. In yesterday's video, I'm watching it, and it caught me off guard hearing it after I said it in the recording. That was funny. So yes, again, I was reminded that I need to go through all my 8.7K plus videos and pull out the greatest hits. That's a Zion project. And so yes, everything of the Babylonians was assimilated into the Jews. And so when the Qumran community wrote the scriptures during the Roman period of time, You get Constantine and Christianity, and then the Jews lost the original understanding of the scriptures of the Qumran community. And other Jews in that time period of the Romans. We're not there yet. And so they go back, and they rebuild the temple, and the Samaritans want to help, and chaos ensues as there's hatred between the two. And supposedly the Jews don't understand the origins for the hatred with the Samaritans, but yeah, nowadays Samaritans and Jews are no longer an issue. But back then, apparently it was. But that's because of the Assyrian origins of the Samaritans intermingling. They're not the pure white master race of northern tribes or of Assyria. They're half-breeds. But after Persia, you then have Alexander the Great, who comes in and just decimates with conquering. I am Sparta! As you get the Persian wars made into Hollywood entertainment. And he would even extend to go up against the elephants of India, the elephant tanks. And then you have him trying to get Egypt and having some issues there at the border of at the end of Canaan. But he did manage to obtain Canaan. And then eventually they would get Egypt with Cleopatra committing suicide with getting bitten by an asp, as the tale goes. But the Jews under the Greeks, it was just new management again. But the Greeks pulled what the Jews called the abomination of desolation, in which the Greek managers of the property decided to remodel the temple. The Jews were not happy with that, because the Greeks came in, destroyed the altar, rebuilt the altar, and began offering the Greek offerings in the Jewish temple, and began the prostituting of women within the temples. And thus the Jews called it the abomination of desolation. And so you have the Maccabean revolt, and this was based upon the Egyptian concept of usurpation of the throne and the need for a Christ king to restore the original religion, order, government. And so the Maccabean revolt with Judas Maccabeus was part of this that successfully retook the Jerusalem temple. And then they had the purging and the menorah lighting, and thus came Hanukkah from this. But because they were written post-Constantine, the Jews do not accept the Apocrypha of the Book of Maccabees that talks about this, even though the Jews celebrate Hanukkah every single year. That is why. And yet they still created the biblical Hebrew text, which was Christianized. The Jews are not making much sense. Because because they've forgotten their origins. They've forgotten the history of their people. And so they do need the book of Maccabees and some of the other stuff if they understood correctly their origins and why they do what they do. Nonetheless, they can do what they want. It's just they can't force other people to believe their side of it, which is incorrect. The truth about the Jews comes from Egypt. That's why they'll never find King David in Jerusalem. He was just there on vacation. He's already in the records in Egypt. But they won't look in Egypt. And so then you have the Ptolemaic period and then the Roman period. And during the Roman period, they're again occupying as new management over Jerusalem. And Rome is more militant in that they don't trust the Jews because of that Maccabean revolt. And so they had a military garrison in Jerusalem. And so the military would march around the walls of the Jerusalem temple to keep the peace, prevent further revolts, to reclaim the land. Rome didn't worship in the Jerusalem temple, though. They let the Jews have their worship in the temple, which was different than the Greeks, which was trying to Hellenize everything to turn the Jews Hellenistic, Greek. And so this is where the Jews are upset with the military occupation of their land and their temple. And so you get Jewish revolts in the Roman period time. And this causes Rome to militarily respond. And the Jews would get utterly crushed by Rome. 70 CE, and the same date of 9th Ave, the Jerusalem temple is again destroyed. As during the Roman occupation of the Qumran community and other therapeutic groups in the area, they're writing scriptures about a future Christ who would come and free them so that they can have their kingdom back. A future Christ, IMMANUEL. Isaiah is written during this time by the Qumran community. And so when Rome destroys Jerusalem and the temple, you still get these pocket groups still writing in that same manner of prophecy for a latter-day time period about the coming of a Christ who would rescue them. And yeah, he's human. Not a space alien, and definitely not a dove. As Bill Maher would often say, that Jesus created himself. Dear God. So yeah, I'm reminded of Bill Maher every Saturday if he has an episode on Friday nights that I watch on YouTube. And yesterday was no different. No different. And so Rome had to constantly fight these rogue groups all around the Middle East. And it got to the point where some of these groups were taking the examples of the prophecies of a Latter-day Christ literally, or at least wanting to be like him, not necessarily literally, because they were wanting to be martyrs in the sense of being that Christ figure, not as somebody who conquers the Romans, but who dies by the hand of the Romans and therefore is a martyr in the cause. Which is really stupid. Nonetheless, this was also frustrating the Roman Empire. Because you get these people who are purposely fighting you to die by you. And thus rising up the others to do the same. You're getting kamikazes attacking Rome. And so eventually, Roman Emperor Constantine, and in 325 CE, Roman Emperor Constantine tries to issue a peace to all of these rogue groups who have created their organization based upon one of the scripture documents, and then having a creed of interpretation of that document as to the identity of the Christ, nature and character of the Christ, and the interpretation of the particular scripture. All different. And Constantine says, we are gathering at Nicaea, and we are going to create one religion, and if you want funding for your organization, you need to come to this meeting. And they took the opportunity and didn't like the Marcion order, who was not invited, and specifically booted out in that first creed as anathema. But all of them gathered, and all of them had to give up their one scripture. All of them had to give up the name of their Christ. All of them had to give up the nature and character of their Christ. They had to give up their religion that they had falsely interpreted from the original authors, using the learning of the Jews for a future Christ who was to come. Constantine would even pull the stunt of claiming that he had seen a sign in the heavens of the Cairo, which is the latter-day date for the coming of the Christ. But they didn't know, because he created the first creed of Christianity 1,700 years ago this August. This is the creation of Christianity. In that first creed, it gives the interpretation that is now supposed to be used on all previous records. Not just Jewish, but on Greek, as I did the Castor and Pollux video for you on the Jewish Pentecost. Awesome. That is a prophecy of the Greeks, Castor and Pollux. Tomorrow, tomorrow, it's fulfilled. Tomorrow, President Nelson, don't touch the Ark of the Covenant. Don't do it! don't do it! No! Nelson, no! I'm trying to protect you! Mormons don't understand. And so, thus began Christianity, with Homoousion Jesus, i.e., not real. He made up the word, because nobody else could consent to a nature and character of their brand new Christ, who they named Jesus. And anybody who reads the book of Matthew to claim that the name must be Jesus is illiterate. It's Immanuel. It says so. And yet, dumb people continue the dumbness. Over 2 billion on the earth today of Christianity believe in this dumbness created by Roman Emperor Constantine 1700 years ago. He just destroyed the records with this one creed. Now everything is literal history. And so now everything can be put in a chronological order. And so thus 100 years later, you get the Latin Vulgate and the Septuagint created, which took separate scriptures, and because they were approved in compliance with the first creed, Castor and Pollux were not, and thus not included, into what they then called the Bible, with the Old and New Testaments in chronological order of literal history. No. They're all the same subject matter. The latter days, giving you the day and the hour of when the Christ is coming, of the Jewish Egyptians. Even the Egyptian documents gave the prophecies for this. That's where the Jews got it from, because of the library in Alexandria. Nonetheless, same with the Babylonians, the Syrians, the Greeks, Persians, Chinese, Aztecs, Mayans, Tolmecs, everybody, because they all came from Egypt. They just changed the language, and thus the names are different. Other prophecies are different, but they're the same theme. That's what scientists, scholars, are not doing right. You don't say, well, this is not the same name as this, therefore they're different. Or even worse, they're all the same and it's our modern interpretation. Jesus is now Immanuel. That's abominable. You don't do that. You are destroying the records of the people, the history of the origins. You're replacing other religions with your brand new religion, claiming it's now your origins. And so yes, there will be no celebration this year of the first creed of Christianity, I guess, because it has to be the Jews in the Roman period who are the creation of Jesus and Christianity. And so they will never accept that Constantine created Christianity, which he did. And that's why I keep teasing Christians and reminding you that this is the 1700th anniversary of the creation of Christianity. You can't deny your own religion, Mormons. So, 600. A man in Saudi Arabia, a descendant of the conquered Babylonians, named Muhammad, grows up and decides he's going to create his own religion, as he's going to fool everybody into believing he's the Jewish Christ, claiming he went to the top of the mountain, got the law of Allah, a new god name, new god, which originates from the Canaanite El, and thus Palestine from the sea people who occupied Jewish territory in Gaza, and call it Philistia. That's the Philistines. You know, you believe it's literal history of David versus Goliath. It's actually the Spartan practice of selecting a man. You know, Achilles, Brad Pitt in Troy. Do I look pregnant? Give me that. You're still arguing. Did Bigfoot take it? Helen of Troy. Yeah, those stories. That's where that story came from. So David and Goliath are not real, because David is merely the son or child who is the Latter-day Christ, who takes on the big, bad, mean Goliath of the great and abominable church of Jesus. Yes, and so turning the Jewish scriptures into literal histories, now all of a sudden the Jews murdered Jesus and thus are hated. But anyway, Muhammad makes it worse, as he's now claiming to be Moses, the future Moses, the fulfillment of Moses, getting the Quran instead of the Ten Commandments for the law, which technically is the book of Deuteronomy. Come on, Jews. If Moses had the tablets of the law, then it's not the Ten Commandments, which are a part of the law. Now, if it was the teachings, then it's the 5 books, and not just the law, and not just the 10 Commandments. Come on, get it right. But nonetheless. And so he doesn't steal the Christianizing of the Jewish documents. He creates his own scriptures, but reveals that they're false by claiming that the Christianizing of the Jewish scriptures are true, referring to Jesus as legitimate, as well as Moses as legitimate. Dear God. Run the test and you find out they're false. And so Muhammad, as his missionary conversion process, is join or die by the sword. We burn your village to the ground. We rape your women, adding them to the harem. And do a scorched earth conversion mission, just conquering everything. And so that's where the Islamic mosque, Dome of the Rock, on the Jerusalem temple ruins comes from. He has conquered the Jews in his thinking, even though it was Rome that did it. And what is fascinating also with Daniel, the book of Daniel, is not only telling the Jews not to become Babylonian, for which they did, but the Nebuchadnezzar dream part, written by the Jews of the Roman period. This is Roman period. So yeah, they already knew the history of Babylon first conquering them, taking them into captivity, binding them to Marduk in the magic underwear. The abomination of desolation, which, sexual abuse is consistent in these enemy kingdoms and religions. But then you have Persia for the statue of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and then Greece, and then Rome, the iron legs. This was written during the Roman period with the iron legs. And yet, now he's prophesying of a coming of iron of Rome mingled with something of clay. And Christians all ignore this part. Because it's Christians. Roman Emperor Constantine creating Christianity. That's the feat. Iron mingled with clay. What happens to the feet in the Nebuchadnezzar dream, Christians? Dumbasses. They all claim that Jesus is the rock. Nope, sorry. Joseph Smith was correct. And Mormons, no, not you. Joseph Smith, not you. But we're the same. We're almost there. Wait. Just wait. Quit jumping to conclusions based on your falsehood that you've been taught. And so, that was Muhammad. As we go back and forth, catching up on what I missed. Okay? And so, then things get set up. America gets colonized by British slaves, and the American Revolution, as the Enlightenment period restored the knowledge of the ancient Greek records and Roman records that had been covered up and hidden, just like women's bodies, by Christianity and then Islam. People are now rediscovering the knowledge of intelligence from records that had been suppressed, oppressed, depressed, compressed by Christianity and then further by Islam. And so then Joseph Smith. But it's not what you believe, and you're telling people. You have the Smith family in Vermont, Joseph Smith Sr., Lucy Mack, and their children in Vermont, trying to live as normal American citizens. They're Congregationalists. Oh, you didn't know that? Exactly. As there was Nathaniel Wood, who moved into the city next door to where the Congregationalists met there in Vermont, not too far from where the Cowdreys lived. And we know, because of the fruit, that both Senior and William Cowdrey went and attended the several meetings as often as occasion would permit of Nathaniel Wood's neo-Congregationalist group, who were more into Jewish Kabbalah. And then you have Justice Winchell, who wants to become a member because of polygamy. Both Cowdrey and Smith did not become members. You need to understand this. Smith tells us this in the rewritten 116 pages. Again, we are using correct historical information, Mormons. We are not using revisionist history from liars who want to create a new religion off of the ruins of a previous religion, which is an abominable thing to do if you hadn't caught on yet. And so he was a part of Freemasonry with the York Rites, became a member in Vermont, as Hiram is named after and spelled after Hiram Abiff, not Hyrum, but Hiram, from his birth certificate, from court records. Which is hilarious that nobody caught this, because in Joseph Smith and the legal justice system, or whatever it's called in Wikipedia, there's the one time that Joseph is arrested, and they list others that were arrested with Joseph Smith, and there's this Hiram Smith, who's also arrested. And there's no link to Hiram Smith. Because it's not spelled the same. That's why his birth certificate is spelled Hiram, not Hyrum, which is why he changed it, so that people won't assume that he's Freemason from Palmyra when they would eventually move there. As senior, would be appointed to Master Mason at the Lodge of Canandaigua, New York. They're still Congregationalists, but there's no Congregationalists in Palmyra. There's Presbyterian. So when Alvin died, they utilized him for the services and told them that Alvin's going to burn in hell because he didn't get baptized before he died. So yeah, no, Lucy Mack did not join the Presbyterian Church. As her own biography, which now I've exposed as a scandal by the one who was helping her write it, who also wrote the other version of the Joseph Smith history. Oops. Because when you get to the part where supposedly Lucy Mack joins the Presbyterians, she does not talk about it. Instead, she says, "I refer you to my son's account." Which is not literal history. Oops, gotcha. You thought it was literal history and put it in as if it were literal history in your version, thus exposing your fraud. Good job. Loser. Move along. Nonetheless, it has been a cause of scandal in this church as Brigham Young's edited and thus Expo Nevermos, when finding the original that was edited, are going, "Oh, you're trying to cover it up." Hilarious. And so, yes, there are some things that are of importance in there, but you need to understand who wrote it and who he was, so that you can discern between truth and error. It's just too complicated for people, I guess, because they don't go into the field. They don't know how to identify forged documents. Because it wasn't just the leaders of the church that didn't recognize that Mark Hoffman had forgeries. Mormons likewise have forgeries, and they don't know they're forgeries. Section 115, Section 116, Section 117, 118, 19, 32, and 28 and 24, is it? Baptisms for the dead. Yeah, you need to know the religious differences. That's why it's important to know the truth of the religious history, so that you don't get fooled by forgeries, by reinterpretations that are obviously not true if you would just read. Nonetheless, this is why this video. And so William Morgan comes to Canandaigua Lodge. He learned of a plot by the Illuminati who have infiltrated America through the Scottish Rites Organization, and had attended a meeting that went over the whole plot. We know this because it became the Book of Mormon. He was working on the book at the Lodge of Canandaigua with Smith Sr. So when 9/11, 9th Ave, 9/11, 586, 9th Ave, 9/11, Babylon destroys Jerusalem. It just occurred to me right now that 9/11 is today, and I'm doing 9/11 destructions. Awesome. See, this is my inspirational associative memory. And so 70 CE, 9/11, Rome destroys the Jerusalem temple. So 9/11, 1826, Canandaigua, New York, all hell breaks loose. The enemy found out about the book being written by William Morgan, and they threatened him with indefinite incarceration. And so David Miller from the Batavian Press came out, released him again, and now Joseph Smith Sr., as the Master Mason, has to protect his brother and get him out of the country to save his life. And there's a whole thing on that, and I've gone over that numerous times over the 8.7K videos. And so then he's responsible for the Book of Mormon. So he knows Sidney Rigdon. Sidney Rigdon says, hey, I obtained this unpublished manuscript by a guy who died at the Pittsburgh Press, Solomon Spaulding. We can use that as the overarching template, because nobody knows about the book. And it was never published. Oops, Mormonism Unveiled, 1834. And he began with the Book of Mosiah, Moses Yah, as the 116 pages were already written. Joseph Sr. would write the book with William Morgan's name about the 3 degrees of Masonry to throw everybody off, thinking that that was his big secret that everybody knew. There are 3 initial rankings in Freemasonry, whether it's Scottish Rites or York Rites. It's the same, and then depending on whether you're Scottish Rites or York Rites, then you branch off into the ranks or the degrees. Scottish Rites are the 33 degrees, York Rites are the Knights Templar. Yeah, Friday the 13th, Friday, this Friday, not yesterday, this coming Friday, next week, Friday the 13th. Today's 9/11, Friday the 13th. Again, I'm inspired. Are you still listening? Or am I talking to an empty room, which I am? This was not planned. It was just religious hate was the initial thing. And and so, yeah, this is the Book of Mormon. It is now being written to warn America. It has to be encoded. The enemy knows now that there's a book out there, and they got to find it and destroy it. They got to find out who has it and murder them. This is why Senior has to encode everything and keep it a secret until it's published. And yet people say, oh, yeah, you're covering up, framing and blaming. Because they don't want to understand. There are people trying to murder them. There's an enemy terrorist organization in America now. And so, with his coopersmith shop, he's obtaining copper for the supports of the barrels to put the gunpowder in to supply to the other York Rite Mason groups in case there's an uprising of the Scottish Rites. And in so doing, he's got all this copper. And with the New Israelites in Vermont of Nathaniel Wood, Justice Winchell taught them how to forge metals. Not forge documents, forge metals. Smelting down the ore and making things from them. And so Smith knew how to do this, and thus you have to have copper plates to give to the print press to then be used on the print press with their thing and the making of the pages. That was all necessary for this. And so thus, section 5 of the Doctrine and Covenants that I covered for you the other day is Senior reading over the manuscript pages to Junior, teaching him about it. Because he's going to become Messiah ben Joseph of the Jews to prepare for the coming of the Christ. Because this enemy knows the Jewish scriptures. They're not illiterate. They're just evil. And so they don't believe that a coming of the Jewish Christ will happen, but they do know that the astronomy is correct. And so they are planning intentionally to be the enemy for the fulfillment of Jewish scripture prophecy. On purpose, they chose to be the enemy for the purpose of exterminating mankind and destroying Christianity and Islam. And in the same process, destroy the Jews. And thus give rise to Lucifer's doctrine for the millennial reign of peace. And so this is Joseph Smith's religion, preparing Mormons for the coming of the Christ, who would be a Mormon. On the time when it was supposed to happen in the future. So, now you get to Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball. Heber C. Kimball found out he's of the enemy. You should have known this by the inverted pentagram of Lucifer used by the Illuminati. You should have known this when John C. Bennett got excommunicated by Joseph Smith for polygamy, which really wasn't polygamy, it was just having sex with other men's wives. But nonetheless, he got excommunicated by Joseph Smith, because Joseph Smith was not involved. And John C. Bennett formed his own halcyon order of the Illuminati, because the Danites framed him to set him up, and he was stupid and fell for it, and so he can't come back to the Danites anymore. They're not his friends. They only wanted you to use you, and now your big beautiful bill is... Yeah, exactly. Elon fell for it. Trump doesn't want friends. He doesn't like humans. Nobody gets this. He lives a very lonely life. And so yes, any pretense to friendship is only to use you for what he wants you to do, to take the fall for it. Everybody in the cabinet positions, yeah, no, he's using you. You need to do what he tells you to do, or he'll fire you. You know, Musk, he used Musk, and then, you know, Musk got hurt. Tesla's, oh no. And so, yeah, you're out. You couldn't be loyal, and so you're out. And so, yeah, there's the feud going on because of it. And nobody seems to understand about what's going on in the bigger picture. Oh my God, listen to me, guys. I already did the video long ago saying Trump is in the Epstein files. We already know this, and yet it's now the big news because Elon said it. I did the video. He's in the blacklist. The little black book, along with Huntsman and his wife. And you don't listen to me. You don't believe. What do I know? So, Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball, they learn about that this is the guys. This is the book. And so, yes, they pull an Illuminati stunt. Infiltrate, rise up in number, rise up in rank, take over leadership positions, coup, destroy New World Order. Guess where we are for America? Almost there. Waiting for Jesus. Just waiting for Jesus now. Come on, Trump. Come on. You can do it. You can do it. Pull the trigger. Just pull the trigger. Get to Zion. My hell. And so, yeah, that's exactly what Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball did. And because they brought in the Scottish Rites who wanted revenge, and they were informed that, yep, this new religion by this kid claiming to have found Egyptian gold plates buried in the ground of America by the York Rites, Knights Templar. It's them. And so they did what Constantine did to the Jews. Turned the Book of Mormon into another testament of Jesus Christ. Joseph Smith is now a Christian leader, as the religion is Christian. Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ, and they're telling people that the name of the church is not the Church of Christ or the Church of the Latter-day Saints, when it was changed by unanimous vote in 1834. They're saying to new converts that it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's how you can identify the forged documents. Knowing the truth, you can see the lies, and thus have discernment. It's not a magical mantle of spiritual powers that bishops keep failing as they rape women and such. Just awful. But that's a Danite for you. These Danites were awful people. Just the worst of human behavior, literally. There's a reason why the extermination order was issued. It's because of these Danites. These guys are bad to the core. And it's not in a good way that women should want them for. Why do I always pick the bad boy? No, these are real bad boys. It is not something that you should fantasize for, women. They will rape you, beat you, hold you hostage, use you, abuse you unto death. It is not something to fantasize about. And yet, I can't control you. I'm right here, women. I'm the good guy. And you don't want me because I'm the good guy. Because somehow good guys don't want sex? What the hell? Only bad boys want sex? Is it because you can't commit to a relationship? And you just want to have other men sow their wild oats in you? Can't commit to one person? Yeah, be careful of beaming modes. Be careful. Nonetheless, yeah, they murdered Joseph Smith. And Brigham Young formed his own religion using Joseph Smith's documents, turning them Christian. And it's even worse because they set a trap in the Book of Mormon. And 1838's history also was a trap, so that anybody who's intelligent won't fall for it. And yet, not as many as Christians or Islamists, which are also 2 billion in the world, 4 billion believing in Jesus. But nonetheless, Mormons get included with the Christian believers. But Mormons are not Christian because of the worse abomination traps set by the authors of the Book of Mormon. Yeah, Senior had to rewrite the 116 pages, by the way, in case you didn't understand that in the context. And so now, instead of a dove raping Mary, a 14-year-old girl, now you have a space alien from Kolob coming to Earth raping his 14-year-old daughter, giving birth to rape baby Jesus. That's worse. Worse. See, Christians, they think it's okay to rape 14-year-old girls because Mary was 14 years old. But for Mormons, not just a 14-year-old girl, but your daughter. See how more awful these Danites are? they were secretly passing around each other's wives in this church. And when they would get found out by Joseph, they would get excommunicated, like John C. Bennett. They kept it a secret. And anybody who found out about it, they said, well, Joseph approves, shh, keep it a secret, because it's illegal and abominable. So yeah, Thomas B. Marsh exposed this Danite coup, and he believed that it was Joseph Smith, like they told him it was. He says it in there, and yet still says, I believe Joseph Smith is going to overthrow the world. Not just America and Missouri. No, the Danites told you this. You told us in the document. Stick to what you know, not what you speculate or believe from the guys who are obviously lying. And that's where we know about Adam-on-Diamond, their secret headquarters, and their coup plot for the latter days. All talked about in the Book of Mormon. And so yeah, everything they did in 1838 was a pattern for the latter day attack. And it happened. And it was only a test run. Oh, what the bleeping bleep? A test run? Oh my God. The Jewish Christ of all prophecy back to the Egyptians, he showed. He did his stuff. And it was just a test run by the enemy? Oh my God. I want to be in Zion. Why is this taking so long? Why can't you guys do this? So here we are. The church has been shut down before. They've failed. America conquered them. And then they rose up spiritually, claiming to still be an organized religion that never got shut down by America. Oops. Yeah, this is a criminal organization of the worst kind. And yet, despite all this, despite their unbelief in the coming of the Jewish Christ, or the Egyptian Christ, aka IMMANUEL, he showed. In the Mormon Church. His parents, both born in the covenant, both served missions, got married at the Temple of Angels, conceived on time, to be born on time, to be born according to prophecy, to have his nativity according to prophecy, to move according to prophecy, to go to the top of the mountains according to prophecy, to have signs in the heavens for all of his major events according to revelation of days and hours in accordance with the prophecies. Other scriptures not included in the Bible also prophesy of him. All happened according to prophecy. He literally went to the top of the mountains. He is restoring Joseph Smith and thus the ancient Jewish and the ancient Egyptian religion for Mormons, for whoever will listen to him. His name is according to prophecy. Everything according to prophecy. His whole life according to prophecy. When he turned 16, he had the ministering of angels as a priest through dreams, and would have prophecy dreams as a seer. He would be endowed and receive the new name, Nephi, not Moroni. He is among Mormons, and they know him not, because Mormons believe the falsehood of the reinterpreted records and the forged documents, of tares choking the wheat of the true records. Everything has been fulfilled according to prophecy, according to the times when they were to be fulfilled. He showed to start his ministry to Mormons on the 23rd of September 2017. He fulfilled everything during the Exodus year of 2020 and 2021. And Mormons still to this day deny him, don't even know that he is supposed to exist, as they all wait for Jesus still to this day, unaware that the great and abominable Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is about to murder them, prostituting them, abusing them, stealing from them, to murder you once Armageddon happens in a coming day. And you want to hate me, huh? You want to accuse me of betraying you, do you? Bleep you.